Focus! Lock and load! Rock and roll! Joseph! Joseph! Pillow fight! Yeah! Get some! Get some! This is my...
Thank you, Joe. I'm pretty excited too. Welcome everybody to the first video of the 2015 NFL season. Some of you probably have already noticed that I sent out the league renewal, so you probably see you received an email to renew your team. You can go ahead and do that whenever you're ready. The reason I had to do it so early is I wanted access to the actual Yahoo League so that I could see what kind of changes we might be able to make moving forward so that we can discuss those. Congratulations to Spencer for winning the big trophy last year. That's good. He won't hang on to it again this year, that's for sure. So the few things that I wanted to mention, we're going to have the draft date on September 5th. That is non-negotiable, and the reason is Rob is going to be coming in from Ontario. The other thing is, if you can't make it, you can ask someone nicely to help you out with drafting your team, whether it be someone that has a team in the league or someone that doesn't have a team in the league. I will not be doing anybody's this year, so if you can't make it and you can't get somebody to nicely cover for you, then you won't have a team. Rob can make it from Ontario, so you guys can figure something out. I'd like to talk about a few things going forward. We'll probably have our annual preseason meeting in July, so keep your eye out for that. I want to talk about the location of where we're going to have the draft this year. So things that a few guys have mentioned is doing it at somebody's house again. Might not be the best right now with should be a 1-year-old almost at the time. So we'll figure out where we're going to do that. Maybe we'll get a keg, or maybe we can rent out a private room at one of the bars or restaurants here in town if we do it ahead in advance. I don't think it actually costs anything to get the private room. You just have to reserve it and then buy some beer. So that's not a problem. The other things that I would like to discuss moving forward is a few things that we have kind of mentioned already with a few guys is going to a PPR league, so points per reception. The other thing that we want to look at as well that seems kind of right on the fence right now is whether or not we're going to keep the tight end position. So we might ixnay the tight end position and put in a flex. By flex, I mean it could be a running back, wide receiver, or a tight end. So you would be able to still draft tight ends, obviously. There's just not a whole lot of depth there. So the other thing to consider is if we go PPR, we might not need to get rid of that tight end position because you're looking at a few guys that might make 10 catches a game. They don't get any goal line looks, but then you're getting more points that way. So if we go PPR, we might not need to get rid of the tight end position. The other thing is we're not going to do it for this year just because of the logistics of it, but moving forward, I would like to have the discussion about whether or not we do a keeper league. So the reason we're talking about it this year and we're not doing it this year is we're not going to keep any players from 2014 into 2015. But we might, if we decide to go to a keeper league, keep some players between 2015 and 2016. So that might change the way you draft your team this year. It does get more complicated like that, so it might be nice to keep it simple. But if we can find a way to make it work for us, that might be an option as well. Another thing I'd like to talk about is kick return yards. So I am one of those people that gets quite frustrated when I have a wide receiver that catches 3 passes in a game for 16 yards, and that's all he's got, but he returned a kick for 85 yards and didn't get the touchdown. He doesn't get any points for that. So that's great. If we can figure out a way to get them yards, that's good. That said, the downfall of that is our value of our wide receivers and running backs that catch kicks are going to be very skewed. And there's not going to be a whole bunch of websites that tell you what their new value is now that they catch kicks. Antonio Brown would be probably the best wide receiver out there. If he's not, well, he's probably in the top 3 already, especially in a PPR league. So that's something else we can talk about. I don't know if I'm too keen on it. It does suck seeing your running back or wide receiver out there catching a kick and returning for 80 yards, but right now we just have the touchdown that gives you points. Other thing I would like to talk about that I would really like to not push, but I would be a huge fan of it, is either getting rid of the defense and having defensive players, or keeping the defense and adding in some defensive players. I played in a second league last year, and having the defensive players was really exciting. It was good because you started looking at tackles, you looked at sacks, you looked at J.J. Watt and everything he did. Unfortunately, I had him, and he had offensive touchdowns as well, which didn't count, which kind of pissed me off. But sometimes it's the way it goes. He caught 2 passes this year for touchdowns, playing a tight end position. The other thing I'd like to talk about is just a couple of things to make the league a little more exciting. And this one I really, really like. If we have, say, 10 teams in our league, just for simplicity's sake, and we have 6 playoff spots, which would be high. I think we did 4 and 10 teams and 4 playoff spots last year. But say we had 6 playoff spots. The top 5 would go by your win record and your points if there's a tiebreaker, just like it was last year. But the number 6 seed would go to any of those other teams that had the highest point total in week 13, so the final week of the regular season. So the top 5 teams are set, and the other 5 teams would battle over that last spot. And to win that last spot, you have to have the highest point total in week 13. So you could theoretically be last in the league and still make the playoffs. So I think that would be a fun way to kind of spice it up a bit, and it would keep the guys at the bottom fighting a little harder to maybe maintain their team a little bit and have a better fight going forward. And it would be really exciting in the last week as well, because not only do you have that playoff position, figuring out where everybody is, we would also have basically a wild card. So the other thing, if we have a 12-team league, can we go divisions? Possibly. So that's something else that we can discuss. Again, there's probably 8, maybe a little more people that I'd like to send a message here to see if they want to play. We're only 97 days away from the first kickoff, guys. So it's less than just over 3 months, and it's going to come quick. So keep your eye out for the July meeting. And again, congratulations to Spencer. We'll talk about those changes at that meeting. We'll talk about the location of where we're going to have the draft on September 5th. So keep that open. Again, I'm not drafting for anybody else this year. You can ask somebody else nicely, but don't ask me. I'm not doing it. That should be it for now. I will send out another video for the invitation for the annual preseason meeting in July. All hail the commish.